very own Wilson Walker is live on the scene right now. He has probably the best ground perspective of the fire in its current state. And at times you could see those flames just shooting high above the construction site, creating that big black billowing smoke. And then sometimes it dies down. But once again, we're seeing another flare up, maybe 1 or 2 construction sites or complexes on this construction site. There's a third construction site in the foreground that seems to be untouched. But Wilson Walker, if you can hear me right now, earlier we just saw part of that middle construction complex actually start to collapse. It looks like those flames are just eating up that fuel.
Yeah, and a further segment of that middle building has just fallen away as well. In fact, you can see the flames in behind that hose of water. That back wall is gone now, so you can see clear through to the building behind it. And so we're watching the fire just eat away at this construction site at this point. It is literally disintegrating in front of all of our eyes here. I imagine that, wow, really kicking up there, I would imagine that the building behind that is going to suffer the same fate here in the next couple moments. You know, I was driving down from San Francisco when I heard about this fire. I could see it all the way down the peninsula, and it has kind of sputtered and flared up and died back and flared up and died back the entire time. It really has not stopped. They've put a lot of water on it. They've brought a lot of units in here, but I think it's pretty much just an effort to control this fire and keep it to what's burning. It does not look like they're going to stop this from burning its way out on those back 2 buildings, as you can see.
And Wilson, you know,
I would also add that yep.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. My apologies. We know wind is going to play a major factor in this as far as fueling those flames. It looks like maybe when you get a gust, we see those billowing of flames and that billowing of smoke. What are the wind conditions like right now where you're standing?
I would call it sustained wind, but definitely gusty. And as you and I have been watching, the gusts of wind absolutely correspond to the explosions of flame coming out of this building. I was going to add that the roadways around here are absolutely clogged. Virtually no traffic moving through this area right now. I'd say for several blocks around this fire. Do not try to drive in here. In fact, there are a lot of people that are just sort of stuck in traffic on the street right now with nowhere to go as they try to get emergency resources into this area. Now, look, here we go. It sort of died back a little bit, and now we got a little gust, and as you can see, the flames sort of popping up on the back building there. I say the back building from where we're standing. But through the smoke down the alleyway, I can see that other building still burning pretty well, although we're slightly obscured by the smoke now. You know, I would say maybe the wind dying back a little bit, which might help a little, but as we've been seeing, it's just going to be hard to slow this down.
Yeah, there goes another flare right there. So once those flames just kind of get that gust of wind or hits another pile of untouched fuel, it seems to flare up. And you can see those orange flames and that black smoke just billowing up. Melanie, I don't know, or Rachel, can we see the Twitter video from earlier from Chuck Martin? Because that gives you kind of a wider perspective. Oh, man, that's a huge flare up happening right now. Once again, if you're just joining us, this is on Redwood City on 2700 Middlefield Road, the site of a construction site. We're going to show you, this is the current video right now. This is a live look. This is what it looked like earlier, but I wanted to show you this wide shot to kind of give you a perspective of how large that complex is. Also, I want to give you an idea how tall those flames are, and you can see the big black smoke just billowing up. This is Wilson Walker's shot, and man, it's another flare-up right now. And that wood and those materials inside that construction site is just getting eaten up by those flames, especially when that wind gust happens. And speaking of the wind right now, are we going to go to Darren Peck? Darren, maybe you can give us a better perspective of what we're seeing as far as the winds playing a huge part in this. I know in San Jose we had those 6 homes that burned down, and that was caused by the embers flying onto the other homes. What are the conditions happening right now?
We're watching that from our camera that sits on top of Black Mountain right now, Ryan, and we're watching the plume in Redwood City, which you can clearly see lifting to the base of the marine layer and then moving south along the peninsula. So there would be a couple of concerns with that, because we know this is an industrial fire, and while we may not know at this point exactly what's burning, it's a construction site. It's likely got material in it other than the particulate matter, which is what we can measure, that you probably don't want to be breathing in. The good news is, if you look at the flow, and we'll bring that back one more step as we leave behind the view of the marine layer, it's elevating. So if there's a good news about having a fire like this today, we're not under an oppressive dome of high pressure. So we're able to lift that column of smoke at least as high as the marine layer and then move it down to the southeast part of the bay. By the way, the vantage point we're looking at here is coming from about 15 miles away as the crow flies, and we can use the virtual map. And I can show you where that vantage point is right now when we take in the perspective from that camera sits on the western edge of the mountains on the west side of Santa Clara Valley, right about here. And Redwood City, as the crow flies, is right down about here. I'll put that's actually today's forecast, but it's a great locator to show you where Redwood City is in relation to that fire. The wind is moving that smoke directly down to the southeast. And if we go from that same vantage point, so remember, we're using that vantage point here from Black Mountain, and now we're looking straight down the bay here. See, we've got Redwood City on there. Wilson was talking about the winds, and he said they're gusting erratically. Another good part of the forecast today is this is not an incredibly strong wind day on an overall basis. But when you have an updraft, and you can see the flames now in the window on my right side, those flames are likely generating enough intense heat within the vicinity of this fire. It now changes wind patterns erratically, unpredictably, much like the camera just moved on us there, but you can also see the flames from that vantage point there. That's the kind of intense heat that will change wind patterns. So if we use the high resolution forecast, and you can kind of see you've got a 20-mile-an-hour wind there, right within the vicinity of the flames, the winds will be a lot more erratic, a lot gustier. That's what Wilson's seeing when he's out there. And you can hear it in his description. Every once in a while, these winds really pick up. Those are intense updrafts coming off those flames. I'm going to show you what the air quality looks like if I have a chance to check back in with you again in a few minutes, guys, because we are detecting reduced air quality downwind of this. It's nothing off the charts yet, but it's something we're definitely going to watch for those communities that are south and east of Redwood City. I'll see you with that later if there's time.
All right, thank you very much, Darren. Once again, if you're just joining us, we are following breaking news out of Redwood City. Construction apartment complex fire under construction is burning right now. Earlier, we were bringing you images from Wilson Walker on one side of the complex. This is from our photographer, Vince, who is on the other side of the complex, and you can just see a different perspective of this fire. And that one side of the complex, we think it's several different complexes, at least 3, and it's a huge construction under site. But you can see that this building is completely engulfed in flames. All the upstairs and all the upper floors of this construction site is now burning right now, and those orange flames are extremely hot as that smoke continues to billow into the air. If you live in this area, San Mateo County sheriffs once again have evacuation orders in place. The original evacuation orders went from Pacific and Calvin Road. They extended those evacuations to Dunbarton Avenue from the train tracks to Middlefield Road. And I know a lot of people are probably trying to get some eyes on this because it is a pretty massive and big site. But where they are asking people to avoid this area. We don't want to have a lot of looky-loos clogging up traffic and clogging out any potential evacuations as people are trying to move away from this. But from Wilson's perspective, we saw the flames would die down, the smoke would die down, and then all of a sudden it would just flare up once again. And it looks like we're having another flare up. And we don't know if that's because of the fuel that's burning right there or that's because of the wind gust. But now we have those two images side by side. On the left of your screen, that is from our reporter, Wilson Walker. Those were the images we were bringing you earlier. From the right of your screen, a wider shot from our photographer, Vince, on the ground. We have two crews on the scene right now. It gives you a big perspective, and it gives you a good idea of what firefighters are up against at this point. Not sure if they're going to be able to save this construction site. My guess, and I'm no expert in this, they're not going to be able to save this. There's just too much fuel. It is too hot. The wind is going right now. Wilson, I don't know if we can see the other side from Vince's shot, Wilson, and you're right. I mean, it's completely engulfed right now, but it looks like we're having another flare up. What is your perspective right now?
Yeah, boy, well, you just said it. Look at that building going at this point. That's about the biggest flare up I have seen coming out of that side of the construction site since we've been here. And it looks like that one is heading the same direction as the middle building we watched fall apart, Ryan. Oddly enough, there's not a lot of wind right now. So something in that building has really gotten going, because there's no particular gust of wind to speak. Well, here comes a little gust of wind. We'll see what happens here. But that building is really, really going now. We've been shuffling around a little bit over here as they've been trying to corral the collection of media that's shown up into a little spot where they're trying to run firefighters in and out of the Fair Oaks Health Center here over on this side of the fire scene. Coming in, I could see a number of folks who'd been pulled out, looked like out of this health center. There's also a daycare around the corner which was stacked with kids out front. I think people have been told to get out of this immediate block. But as we're looking at that building go, holy cow. It is really burning now, Ryan.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, these are some of the largest flames we've seen on this fire. The enormity is startling, and I can only imagine. We're looking this at home and in the studio from video. I can only imagine what this looks like in person, and it looks like it's burning extremely hot. I mean,
earlier it was.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say earlier, when the building closer to us was burning and the wind was drifting a little bit more this direction, you could absolutely feel the heat of that fire.
That was what I was going to ask.
Now it's pushing a little bit. Yeah, it's pushing a little bit the other direction now, so we cannot. But earlier, during one of those big flare-ups in a slightly different wind direction, you could feel it on the other side of the street here when I walked up. It was warm. But if you also notice the smoke kind of drifting upwards a little bit here, as we're talking about the wind, which kind of comes and goes. But we like we said, 15 minutes ago, Ryan, it's just sort of just watching the inevitable here. This building is just going to burn to the ground.
Yeah, it's going to be a total loss. I'm no expert in construction material, but from the looks of it, it looks like this is a wooden frame building.
As far as I can tell, and I'm looking through the bits that have burned away, and that's about all I'm seeing is sort of just studs that haven't burned off kind of standing up in there. I do not see anything else, with the exception of maybe the ground floor on the nearest, obviously that looks like some concrete construction, but I imagine those upper floors, you might be correct.
Yeah, and Wilson,
it looks like it.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was just going to, if you're just joining us right now, this is two perspectives of the fire going right now. The left side is from Wilson Walker, who's on the rear side, and then our photographer, Vince, that's the images on the right side. And you can see from Vince's perspective, that complex and that construction site, that is fully engulfed. It's just nothing but red flames and black smoke at this point. And as that smoke continues to billow in the air, that's going to create some air hazards. So if you live nearby, the best advice right now is to just shelter in place. And Wilson, I mean, that thing's going hot now.
Yeah, and you know, now the wind's sort of pushing the smoke down. You're talking about the smoke and people living near the smoke. We get a little push of wind, and you can see it flatten out. You know, which I'm sure people downwind can tell when that is happening, and you get the smoke kind of pushed down to ground level there. I kind of wish I could see Vince's shot from the other side. You know, just because that building really is going up. I would also imagine that they've cleared a bunch of space out beneath that building for when the top floors inevitably start to give way, because I think that is going to come crashing down on us at some point.
Yeah, we've seen parts of that building already collapse. And Wilson, thanks for joining us, and thanks for the perspective of this. Are we going to go to Darren? Because we want to talk a lot about that smoke. That smoke is black. It's thick. It's billowing over different areas. And Darren, if you can kind of give us a perspective, where is that smoke going? Is it heading in a certain direction? And should residents be wary of where that smoke is blowing?
Great. Okay, if we take a look at the vantage point on that, Ryan, there's as we've all come to know so well over the last few years as we've gotten better with air quality sensors, purple air is probably one of the top resources for many of us to check in, because the network of air quality sensors is so much higher than just about any other source. There is a clear pattern on here. You can see that yellow line, which is telling you there is an indication already reading moderate air quality as you move south from there. That's one way of reading particulate matter. So really the only thing this is telling you about, in fact, I can click on one of those sensors and you kind of see how in the upper left-hand corner we get an actual reading that shows us that this is very quickly spiked into the moderate category. That's only telling you about the physical particle. It doesn't tell you anything about the nature of what's actually within those particles. What's the chemical compound? What's the nature of the air quality that you're breathing? On the one hand, this could be seen as at least marginally good news down south, because moderate is fairly mild. And when we look at the plume and watch the trajectory as we've been watching in our time lapse, this is from our camera that sits on the west side of the Santa Clara Valley, you can see the pattern. You don't see the flame here, but you see how the smoke is very quickly elevating. It's venting off that fire pretty quickly. And then it's getting caught up in the flow of the marine layer and moved down to the southwest. So the majority of the smoke, the particulate matter, and anything else that's unpleasant and, you know, an unwanted chemical compound that perhaps communities down to the south and east of this fire would be breathing in, the majority of that's staying at elevation, but not all of it. So even just a moderate reading, you'd probably want to limit your time outdoors if you're in any of these communities down to the southeast. And of course, I know there are a lot of air quality sensors on here, but we know this part of the bay so well. This is working our way down to Santa Clara. This is Mountain View. You can see Moffett Field on there. Any of the communities here really along 101. That's the 101 side here. As you start to go down from Redwood City, south and east from there, heading down towards Santa Clara, you do see a little bit of a movement here of the moderate heading down towards the more southern part of the Santa Clara Valley, and that certainly does fit in with the high-resolution wind forecast. You can see the streamlines. You see how they're moving? They kind of move that smoke down towards the southeast. That's just the smoke aspect of this, and thankfully for now, it appears to be a fairly minor side of this story. I think the image is coming from our left of the intensity of the flames and the unknown duration that we might have here for what is a pretty significant fire at an industrial complex, and the problems that's going to cause on the much more local scale. I think, if anything, the smoke drifting away for this point, at least for now, is somewhat positive news.